politics for a while, I'm going to be talking about an article that I read in the Final Call newspaper. Tyrone Bowman Live. Welcome everyone to the program. For those of you who have subscribed to Tyrone Bowman Live, I appreciate your subscription. I hope you'll continue to follow me as we work on getting things better, like raising money to get equipment and building the little studio so that I can sound a lot better and even look a lot better on camera. And I won't have to keep wearing the same shirt, tie, and stuff over and over and over again. So if you want to help me do some of that, hit me up at $PIEXEL number 4. That's $PIEXEL number 4. So let's get down to the article headline in the September 23rd, 2024 edition of the Final Call newspaper. The headline reads, "The Criminalization of Tyreek Hill. NFL star wide receiver detained, manhandled by police." The article is written by Nabi Al-Muhammad, and he is the editor-in-chief of the Final Call newspaper. And if you'd like to contact Naba A. Muhammad, you can hit him up at, I like to give credit to people, at www.finalcall.com or straightwords4@gmail.com. And you can find him on Facebook or follow him at RM-Final Call on X. Now let's get down to this article. According to the Final Call newspaper, Tyreek Hill, Miami Dolphins star, was taken down, handcuffed, kneed in the back, and manhandled by cops. The criminalization of black males and refusal to punish bad cops is an everyday injustice. In the old 1990s night commercials, Morris Blackman, played by Spike Lee, asked basketball great Michael Jordan, quote, "Is it the shoes?" close quote. In Tyreek Hill's case, I can guarantee you it wasn't the shoes that got the attention of officers in a potentially deadly encounter. Tyreek, a well-paid athlete, was driving an expensive car. He's paid his dues, sacrifice, and should be able to enjoy the fruits of his labor. He was a short distance from the stadium where he plays. But driving while black has long been a crisis in America, and you don't have to drive a fine car to be targeted. Almost every African American or Latino can tell a story about being pulled over by the police for no apparent reason other than the color of his or her skin, especially if he or she happened to be driving in the wrong place at the wrong time or even driving the wrong car, said the American Civil Liberties Union, citing cases stretching back to the 1990s. Tyreek was born March 1, 1994. Victims of these racially motivated traffic stops rarely receive a traffic ticket or are found guilty of any violation of the law. It's a practice called driving while black, said the ACLU. The U.S. Supreme Court established an open season on motorists in 1996 when it ruled that police could use any traffic offense as an excuse to pull a car over. Quote, close quote. Black and white drivers engage in illegalities at about the same rate, 28.4% in searches of blacks and 28.8% in searches of whites. Yet the ACLU noted 41% of black Americans say they have been stopped or detained by police because of their race, and 21% of black adults, including 10% of black men, reported being victims of police violence. Tyreek came before microphones September 8th, saying he did nothing wrong and was confused about what happened and why. He calmly explained how his mother taught him to be respectful and cooperative, how he wanted to be a police officer, God knows I don't know why, and respected them. There are bad apples everywhere. He continued, let me just stop here and insert this. This is not a case about bad apples. This is a case about some racist Spanish Cuban cops who saw Tyreek Hill driving this expensive car that was well worth over $100,000, and they decided to stop him. They deliberately and systematically violated him in every possible way. They violated him constitutionally, and they violated him as a man. If that had been one of the white athletes like Tom Brady, the All-American, who they brag about, won 5 Super Bowl rings, but can I tell you that someone did it better way before Tom Brady? Well, he's the one they want to talk about. Or had that been another white quarterback or defensive linebacker, they would have simply been reprimanded, given them a handshake, and said, can you get me some free tickets? Can you give me an autograph for my children? And they would have let them go on their way. But these cops remind me of a goon squad, of a particular gang. That's why the superintendent quickly released the video, because they knew all hell was going to break out. They knew this from the onset, but these cops didn't care. And they also know that the NFL and Tyreek's attorneys are going to be all over their behinds. And a massive lawsuit is going to ensue, and believe me, firings are going to come next. They may be on administrative leave right now, but these cops not only going to be reprimanded, they're going to be fired, because somebody has to pay. Suppose they had killed him. Let's just deal with the hypothesis. Suppose they had shot and killed Tyreek Hill and then lied about it and covered it up like they do in many instances and cases. And then they found out that he was an NFL star. Can you imagine the outcry that the NFL would have had? The hundreds of millions of dollars that they invested in this young man, and then he still had to go and play the game because he's a member of the Miami Dolphins squad. I don't care what you all are saying in the comment section. That doesn't bother me. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about anyway. This is my program. I'll say what I want to say. Get your own program. Get your own YouTube channel. Go through this painstaking process of building it. And the bottom line is, if you had been a white athlete, this would have never happened. Now let's get back to this article. He said that there are bad apples everywhere. No, there are corrupt, racist, black and white and Spanish cops everywhere. You got a lot of black cops who are racist toward their own people. Tyreek continued, but he added, what if he had not been a big-time athlete? What's the worst-case scenario? I already said it. Death. If Dexter Reed had not been stopped by Chicago police, he would still be with us, Laura Washington wrote earlier this year about a controversial Chicago case. Body cam footage of his killing, which many call an execution, captured the 26-year-old man sitting in his SUV. 5 cops in street clothes jumped out on him in a city known for often violent, deadly carjackings. One demanded that Reed roll down his car window. At first, Reed complied, then rolled the window back up. Officers screamed and shouted more demands. No, they were cussing. Reed started shouting. Washington wrote, a civilian oversight body said an officer was wounded in the wrist. An officer was wounded in the wrist. So that requires him to be on administrative leave with pay. He was wounded in the wrist because he was too busy apprehending Tyreek Hill. Tyreek did nothing to these officers. That's why he was wounded in the wrist. Y'all better know your constitutional rights. You better listen to me. Let me tell you something. I'm a criminal justice major, working and studying very, very hard. You become a criminal defense attorney and an advocate for criminal justice reform. And the things that I'm learning and the things that I know, you better know your constitutional rights. Stop playing games and get serious, because there is an all-out war coming here in America. If Trump becomes the next president of this nation, you have never seen violence unfold before, because he allowed the police to run rampant. It'll be open season on black people. He's already made it known that he's a racist and a bigot. He chose someone even more racist and bigoted than him in J.D. Vance. They're doing every damnable thing that they can and telling every unfounded truth and lie to try to stop Vice President Kamala Harris from becoming the next president of the United States of America. This is a war. Get off your behinds. Stop playing games. Get registered. Bring yourself out. Come away from your extracurricular activities for a couple hours and vote for the sister. You don't have to agree with everything that she does. Hell, y'all don't agree with everything that Biden does. People didn't agree with everything that Clinton did, but they still voted for him. They didn't agree with everything that Barack Obama did, but they still voted for him and put him in office twice. Let's get serious. Let's get real. You sit back and play if you want to, and you can think this is a joke. The morning after, if you thought the first insurrection was something, wait until you see what they're planning now. Well, let's get back to this article about Tyreek Hill, or the criminalization of Tyreek Hill. One demanded that Reed roll down his car window. At first, Reed complied, then rolled the window back up. Officers screamed and shouted more demands. Reed started shouting. Washington wrote, a civilian oversight body said, an officer was wounded in the wrist. The officers fired 96 shots in 41 seconds. Reed staggered out of the car on the driver's side and stumbled to the ground. The officers kept shouting. 3 of those shots came while Reed was lying motionless on the ground, according to Andrea Kirsten of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, wrote Washington. This tragedy leaves us with so many questions. For example, the police say he was being stopped for not wearing a seatbelt. So you murdered him? How many white people drive on Raildale Drive out in Beverly Hills, California at full speed without seatbelts on? They're not getting shot up and killed and murdered. Just like the senseless beating of Rodney King when that occurred in the 90s. And the cops were acquitted. An all-out riot broke out in California that they could not stop. This is ludicrous. So this tragedy leaves us with so many questions. For example, the police say he was being stopped for not wearing a seatbelt. How did the officers know he wasn't wearing the belt? Since his car had tinted windows, they lied. On the video, the officers wearing street clothes drive hard, fast, jump out, and surround Reed's car. Did Reed shoot out of terror? She asked in the Chicago Tribune piece. Organizing around Reed's death has been going on in the Windy City, with many outraged and demanding justice. Chicago police officers reported making more than 500,000 stops last year on the city's streets, continuing to stop black and brown motorists at rates disproportionate to their numbers in the driving population, the ACLU reported in 2024. In 2023, Chicago Police Department officers stopped black drivers at a rate of 3.75 times that of white drivers and stopped Latino drivers at a rate of 2.73 times that of white drivers. These disparities are similar to racial disparities reported in prior years in Chicago. CPD has never explained why it disproportionately stops black and Latino drivers. There are bad apples in every system, but when institutions fail to act to correct wrongs, especially with folks having guns, handcuffs, and badges, the whole system is rotten. Never surrender.